more and more examples. We have Mitch McConnell coming out and saying, we're open to a federal ban. Not going to promise it. Probably won't get rid of the filibuster to do so. Probably, but who knows? And of course, here is Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves. And what comes next after? I mean, because in Mississippi, abortion's going to be completely banned. So where do they go next? Oh, they must be completely satisfied with this. They'll be done because it's only about abortion. It's not about controlling women's bodies. It's not about making sure that women go back into the kitchen. This is not
It's just about stopping murder.
This is not about some type of fundamentalist vision of where women get relegated back to being second-class citizens in this country. It's not about that. That's why we would never consider anything else.
It's about compromise.
Yes, it's not. This is not about making women suffer consequences if they decide to do the dirty. No. Well, maybe it is.
All we have is a leaked draft. We don't have a final.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I
agree
say on the matter.
But just to be clear, the state of Mississippi, you're not going to then target IUD or Plan B, which are methods of birth control that might not allow a fertilized egg to be implanted. And this is not a theoretical construct. This is not the state of Louisiana, which I recognize is a neighboring state, not your state. I mean, they're talking about not only criminally charging girls and women who get abortions as being committing homicide, but they're also talking about defining the moment of conception as fertilization, which would theoretically, if this were to become the law of Louisiana, and it is not yet, mean that murder, if you use an IUD, you are committing murder theoretically. So it's not, I'm not making this up. These are the conversations going on in legislatures in your area. But so just to be clear, you have no intention of seeking to ban IUDs or Plan B?
No intention?
That is not what we're focused on at this time. We're focused on looking at see what the court allows for. The bill that is before the court is a 15-week ban. We believe that the overturning of Roe is the correct decision by the court. And so in Mississippi, we don't have laws on the books that would lead to arresting individuals or anything along those lines.
You mean not arresting girls or women, but you would arrest doctors?
Well, certainly, I don't think that that you're going to see doctors performing abortions if we have a state statute which says that they're not allowable except for those exceptions that we've mentioned earlier.
Okay, we don't need to go any further on this because, of course, when we did when we passed the law that said you can't steal a car, everybody was like, we're not going to steal a car.
No follow-up on no intention. I mean, I'm sorry, to shoehorn freaking sports into this, but a few weeks before they traded Russell Wilson, Pete Carroll said, we have no intention of trading Russell Wilson. It's almost like a joke in sports media. When you say no intention, it means you're going to do it. It means you're going to do it later on. You just don't want to tip your hand and give up your leverage, which is exactly what's happening in this situation.
This was even more explicit. They just said, at this time. In other words, we have so much on our plate. Listen, we're so busy restricting women's rights that we have to do one thing at a time. Come on, Jake. We gotta walk before we start to really full on sprint.
Thanks for the follow up too on that incredibly important point, by the way. And why was the question framed as you don't have any intention of doing this, right? It makes it super easy as opposed to we're just going to wait it out for a little bit longer and then we'll go after it.
And we should say that conversation that they're having in the Louisiana legislature, it's actually, they've passed it out of committee. And if anybody wants to take bets on whether that's going to go through.
It's also sort of you aren't going to go further than this. It sort of acknowledges we're just going to accept what is being done.
Right.
IUDs, the reason they're targeting Plan B and IUDs in particular is because those are methods of contraception outside of the man's control. If a woman puts an IUD in herself, there's nothing a man can do in terms of control. He does not have the agency over the insemination because the IUD is going to block it. Same with Plan B, right? It takes away control from men in relationships, much more so than other methods that are more, transparent. But I'm sure they'll go after the pill eventually. Other methods of birth control that are less about the woman's agency directly. That it's just insane. They're really going to claim that like any method that attempts to block fertilization in and of itself, if the sperm is inside of the woman, is murder. That's what they're going to go with.
Yeah. I mean, once that egg and that sperm touch, and that's not how you get pregnant. You need to embed this thing in the uterus. But just the idea that we're talking about this now is already, this is what they're going to do. They're just going to keep going. This is sort of like the gish galloping of legislation, right? Gish gallop is the way that when you're in a debate, you throw out so many things that by the time the person has a chance to respond, there's 12 things that they got to respond to. I mean, this is also, just to be clear, also what, the Trump presidency was like. We're going to do so many egregious things in a day that you're not going to have time to talk about them.
Can't we just focus on this Roe thing? It's like, no, let's talk about all the hypotheticals that come after this Roe thing.
Right, because they're already onto it.
Yeah.
Which is why, like, this Roe conversation needed to happen 6 years ago. And it didn't. And here's where we're at. And 3 years from now, I mean, buckle up, folks. Get ready to, not get ready. I mean, I honestly think that, part of the problem with this, part of the problem that this leak effectively did was also make it hard to get people to protest now, right? Because it's like, well, we're not sure if this is actually going to be the ruling. So it freezes people who want to protest against it. Am I going out and protesting against about what? Like maybe something that's going to happen? That would have been the same thing 3 weeks ago.
I mean, it doesn't look like it's freezing people, though. They're outside of Kavanaugh's house.
100 people. But I mean, I think largely, it's going to be very different when the actual ruling is coming down. I mean, if I had to guess right now, the major organizations that are looking into this are trying to keep their powder dry until the actual ruling comes, because that way you're not you're not protesting against something that is theoretical. Because I think like the idea that that Kavanaugh is going to change his mind with those protests, I think is wrong. I think the value of those protests, though, are to largely signal how angry people are and to get the Democrats to gear up towards this. But I don't think, Kavanaugh sat there, lied through his teeth during his hearing. There were people who were certainly protesting about the fact that he was, at the very least, lying his assault at the time, lying about all sorts of things. And he's got the perfect right-wing mind. You protest me for being a sexual assaulter when I was a teen. You're
going to pay.
No, it's not even that. Before you get to that, it's like, this is unjust for me. This is unjust for me.
Yeah.
Because, look, I grew up in a society where teenage boys, if they did stuff, it didn't impact them later in life. And now I got to be held to account to what I did in high school.
Teenage white boys.
Yes, exactly. But for him, all teenage boys
are white boys.
There's
no teenage black boys because they're all men as soon as, and we should prosecute them as such.
And it doesn't even occur to him wait a second, if I had done that as a teenage black boy, there would be no law school. There would be nothing. And it's unjust. It's unjust to me. Self-aggrievement is the first place they go.
Yeah.
And we see it here.
I mean, so again, are masturbatory emissions, is that murder because the sperm should be seeking an egg at every single time, right?
Well,
to borrow from Elle Woods or use it.
Yeah, I think that won't happen because of the nature of the mass.
Would Kavanaugh be against that? What so much for people's medical freedoms?
But I think
now we want to control what IUD gets or does not get inside of a woman's uterus.
I think you hit on it when you said it is a birth control that is controlled by the woman. And I think you're going to see, if you wanted to track on what is going to be outlawed, that's the way you look at it.
The pill, the man can throw it out. The man knows where it is. He can see it physically. The IUD, the man can't do anything about that. That's in the uterus unless,
I wouldn't be surprised.
There could be a really violent way to pull it out. But
I wouldn't be surprised if there's regulations about the pill. I wouldn't be surprised about that. I'm quite convinced they'll find a way.